It began on live television, in front of millions. The air was thick, almost electric, as the studio lights bore down on two men who had shaped America's destiny in starkly different ways. On one side sat Donald Trump, restless in his chair, jaw tightening with every passing second. On the other, calm and deliberate, Barack Obama adjusted his microphone, his face carrying that quiet, unshakable composure the world had come to know. Then, with a measured pause that seemed to stretch an eternity, Obama leaned forward. His words were not shouted, not flung like insults. They were steady, sharp, and devastatingly precise. The truth, he began, is that no leader who claims to serve the American people should ever use the Oval Office to enrich himself, obstruct justice, or trample the law. And yet that is exactly what Donald Trump has done. The crowd gasped. The moderators froze. For a split second, the world seemed to stop turning. Trump's face flushed a deep crimson, his mouth already moving before his thoughts had. "Caught up? That's a lie?" he barked, his voice cracking as he jabbed a finger across the stage. "You're making things up. You're a fraud." His words tumbled over each other, desperate, unpolished, raw. Obama didn't flinch. He simply let the silence do its work. The contrast was undeniable. One man unraveling in anger, the other anchored in truth. The cameras captured every bead of sweat glistening on Trump's forehead, every twitch in his jaw, every restless shift in his chair. Social media erupted within seconds. Hashtags lit up the screen. Hashtag Obama exposes Trump. Hashtag meltdown live. Hashtag truth vs lies. The moderator's attempt to regain control was drowned out by the murmurs in the audience. Half gasps, half quasps, half applause. Trump slammed his hand on the table, shouting over everyone, "This is a witch hunt. You're all in on it." But the more he raged, the smaller he seemed. Asterisk, and there was Obama, unmoved. His voice returned calm and deliberate, cutting through the noise like a blade through silence. The American people deserve leaders who answer to the Constitution, not to their own bank accounts. The studio erupted again. As powerful as this opening strike was, it was only the beginning. Because what Obama said next would not only shake Trump, it would flip the entire debate upside down. Asterisk, the confrontation that night was not just another television spectacle. It was a mirror, reflecting the deepest anxieties and highest hopes of a nation at war with itself. Millions of Americans sat glued to their screens, families in living rooms, workers huddled around break room TVs, students streaming the debate on their phones. For some, this was entertainment. For others, it was something far more serious. A fight for the very character of the country they called home. The climate could not have been more charged. After years of bitter division, scandals, and endless headlines, people were weary. They were tired of leaders who treated power as a personal prize, tired of watching rules bent and broken without consequence. At the same time, hope still flickered. Many longed for a return to dignity, to the idea that truth mattered, that integrity was not weakness, but strength. And here it was, playing out live with no chance to rewind or edit. Obama's words had landed like a thunderclap. He wasn't merely calling out Trump's actions. He was indicting an entire style of politics fueled by greed, by lies, by contempt for ordinary people. The message was clear. If such behavior went unanswered, if arrogance and corruption continued unchecked, then the damage would not just stain one man's legacy. It would seep into the foundation of democracy itself. The stakes felt personal for millions watching. An immigrant family watching from a cramped apartment heard in Obama's voice a defense of their hard-won place in America. A black teenager scrolling through clips on social media saw a leader who spoke with calm dignity against a man who mocked and bullied. A veteran in a small-town diner leaned closer to the television, remembering the oath he once took to defend the Constitution and wondering why so few in power seemed to honor it. This was not simply about one debate stage. It was about the fear of what happens when corruption goes unpunished. When leaders lie openly and face no consequences, truth itself becomes fragile. When money and self-interest rule, ordinary citizens pay the price in lost jobs, in broken trust in fading faith that the system will ever serve them. Asterisk, that is, why Obama's words cut so deeply. He wasn't sparring with Trump for points or applause. He was putting a spotlight on something larger, the soul of America on trial, live and unfiltered. And for once there was no script Trump could follow, no crowd he could rally to drown out the silence between Obama's words. The tension grew with each passing minute. Social media exploded with reactions, splitting the nation in real time. Some cheered the moment as long overdue justice, a reminder that truth still had champions. Others fumed, clinging to denial, insisting that the accusations were smears. But no one could look away, because beneath the shouting and hashtags lay the unspoken question: what kind of country do we want to be? One where power bends the law, or one where the law bends power? One where arrogance writes the headlines, or one where dignity writes history? The audience could feel it, the weight of history pressing down on that stage, the sense that this moment was bigger than the two men who occupied it. Obama's calm stood for every American who ever felt silenced. Trump's rage embodied the fear of losing unchecked power, and just when it seemed like the confrontation couldn't get more explosive, it did. Asterisk, long before the cameras caught him red-faced and shouting at Barack Obama. Donald Trump had already built his empire on spectacle, arrogance, and a carefully crafted illusion of invincibility. To understand why that moment on live television mattered so deeply, one has to peel back the layers of his past, the scandals, the shameless contradictions, the endless hunger for attention that shaped him into the figure unraveling under the studio lights. Trump's story is often sold as the tale of a self-made billionaire. But scratch the surface, and the contradictions spill out. His father's money was the true foundation, cushioning every failure that would have buried anyone else. Casinos went bankrupt, airlines collapsed, universities closed in disgrace, but Trump always rebranded failure as brilliance. "I'm a winner," he boasted. "Nobody knows the system better than me." Yet time and again, the system was bent not by genius, but by loopholes, lawyers, and the backs of working people left unpaid. And this arrogance wasn't limited to business. In politics, Trump thrived on belittlement. From the very first day of his campaign, insults rolled off his tongue like cheap applause lines, mocking the disabled, slurring immigrants, branding opponents with childish nicknames. What's not strategy so much as instinct, tear others down to build himself up. What shocked the world was how far that instinct carried him. What shocked the world even more was how normalized it became. Asterisk, but arrogance has a way of catching up. There were the investigations into shady finances, the accusations of hush money, the whispers of obstruction and cover-ups. Each time Trump brushed them off with the same swagger: fake news, witch hunt, total hoax. His followers cheered the defiance, mistaking denial for strength. But behind the curtain, his rage grew whenever the spotlight turned toward his own record. On that debate stage, every flash of anger carried echoes of his past. The same man who shouted over women reporters was now shouting over Barack Obama. The same man who dodged accountability in courtrooms was dodging questions under the hot studio lights. The same man who prided himself on dominance was revealing, live on air, just how rattled he became when confronted by calm truth. It wasn't just the insults, it was the pattern. Trump's entire brand was built on excess, on pushing boundaries, on assuming he could bully his way past consequences. He mocked veterans, yet claimed to respect the military. He preached law and order, yet bent rules whenever it suited him. Promised to drain the swamp, yet surrounded himself with convicted allies. Every contradiction piled higher until arrogance became not just a flaw, but the defining feature of his public identity. And arrogance is brittle. It cannot withstand dignity. That was the contrast unfolding for millions to see. Trump's voice rising in desperate volume, Obama's voice dropping into measured calm. The more Trump raged, the more his carefully curated image cracked. For decades, he had thrived on being the loudest man in the room. But now, on this stage, his volume betrayed him. Asterisk, the spectacle had all the ingredients of his past controversies. But with one difference this time, the opponent wasn't another politician caught off guard, or a journalist trying to get a question in. This time it was Barack Obama, a man who knew Trump's tactics inside and out. A man who had already lived through years of Trump's manufactured birther attacks. Years of lies aimed at undermining his legitimacy. A man who had every reason to lose his temper, yet chose composure instead. That was what made the moment devastating. The country was watching the essence of Trump exposed, a man who had spent his life confusing arrogance for strength, finally facing someone who revealed just how weak that arrogance really was. And while Trump tried to paint himself as the ultimate fighter, it was clear he had never faced an opponent like this, not one who met rage with stillness, not one who made truth louder than insults. But if Trump's arrogance was decades in the making, Obama's resilience was forged in fire. Barack Obama's presence on that stage was not an accident of history, nor was it a performance crafted for television. It was the culmination of a life shaped by struggle, resilience, and an unwavering belief in the promise of America even when America did not always believe in him. To understand why his calm shook Donald Trump so deeply, you have to trace the journey that made him who he was. Obama was born in Honolulu in 1961, the son of a Kenyan father and a mother from Kansas. His story began far from the power centers of Washington or the marble floors of Wall Street. It began in modest apartments, in classrooms, where he was often the outsider, in neighborhoods where his very identity was a question mark. He grew up straddling worlds black and white, American and international, middle-class hope and working-class struggle. From the start, he knew what it meant to feel both invisible and under a spotlight at the same time. That duality became his strength. While others saw division, Obama learned connection. While others doubted his place, he carved one out with intellect and empathy. He buried himself in books, searching for answers in Baldwin, Gandhi, Lincoln, King. He studied not just to rise, but to understand a habit that would later define his politics. When he moved to Chicago in the 1980s, it wasn't to chase wealth, it was to organize, to listen, to sit in church basements with workers and single mothers and young men searching for a path forward. He learned that leadership wasn't about the loudest voice, but about the steady one that doesn't waver when the storms rise. That's where he found his footing, his cadence, his unshakable calm. His rise to the presidency was anything but guaranteed. For every cheer he received on the campaign trail, there were jeers questioning his name, his background, his legitimacy. He faced a tidal wave of doubt that would have crushed many others. But instead of answering insult with insult, he answered with patience, humor, and above all, dignity. He stood in front of massive crowds and told them not just what they wanted to hear, but what they needed to hear. That change would not be easy, but that it was possible if people believed in each other. Asterisk when he finally won the presidency. He carried not only the hopes of millions, but also the burden of history. The first black president of the United States stood as a symbol of progress, but also as a target. His every move was scrutinized, his every word dissected. Through 8 years of relentless attacks, some political, some deeply personal, Obama remained steady. He faced a financial crisis, wars abroad, and opposition determined to see him fail. Yet through it all, he projected composure. Even when voices questioned his birth certificate, and Trump himself tried to delegitimize his very existence, Obama met the lies with a wry smile and a steady hand. That is what made his calm so powerful. It was not the calm of someone untouched by hardship. It was the calm of someone who had been tested by it time and again. It was the calm of a man who knew what it meant to be underestimated, to be doubted, to have your very identity mock-tanned, who chose not to break, but to rise. And for millions watching that debate, his presence was more than political. It was personal. Children of immigrants saw in him proof that their dreams were not impossible. Communities of color saw in him a leader who carried their struggles with pride. Even those who disagreed with his policies could not deny the grace with which he carried himself, the steadiness that reassured them in uncertain times. This was why his confrontation with Trump resonated so deeply. Obama embodied the opposite of Trump's bluster. Where Trump thrived on chaos, Obama thrived on composure. Where Trump wielded insults like weapons, Obama wielded truth like a compass. Where Trump's history was one of arrogance, Obama's was one of endurance. And that night, the contrast was impossible to ignore. Trump's shouting looked small against Obama's stillness. Trump's rage looked reckless against Obama's dignity. Viewers at home could feel it in their bones, the weight of a man who had carried far heavier burdens than a televised debate, and who would not be shaken by theatrics. Obama's resilience had been forged not in boardrooms or tabloids, but in the fire of identity, struggle, and the long march toward justice. That was what made his voice unshakable, his presence undeniable. He was not just another politician trading barbs on television. He was the living embodiment of the idea that dignity, patience, and truth can stand taller than arrogance, lies, and fear. And it was this very calm, this very history, that made Obama's next move devastating for Trump. The studio had become a furnace. The tension so thick it seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Every camera in the room caught the same unfolding drama: Donald Trump. Red-faced and restless, pounding the table with words that grew louder but not sharper, more chaotic but not more convincing. Every time Obama spoke, Trump lunged across. The silence with interruptions, shouting over both the moderators and his opponent. Asterisk, "You're a disaster, Barack." "A total disaster," Trump barked, waving his hand dismissively. "Everyone knows it. You ruined this country. The only reason you're even here is because of me." His voice cracked on the last word, an edge of desperation cutting through the bravado. Obama sat back, unshaken. He let Trump's words bounce off him, each insult ricocheting harmlessly in the air, before collapsing under its own weight. His calm, almost serene silence seemed to mock Trump more than any rebuttal ever could. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, watching the imbalance widen with each passing minute. Asterisk, Trump pressed harder. "You spied on me. You rigged the system. He broke off, tripping over his own accusations. You're corrupt. Everybody knows it." He slammed his fist against the table as though volume could transform chaos into coherence. Asterisk. The moderators tried to intervene, but Trump barreled past them, his words colliding in a torrent of half-finished thoughts and recycled slogans. Each interruption grew more desperate, each insult less effective. The once feared spectacle of Trump's aggression was unraveling into something smaller, something almost pitiable, and yet Obama remained the picture of composure. So often, he offered the faintest smile, never cruel, but as if he knew that patience itself was a weapon. He glanced toward the audience, his eyes calm, almost reassuring, as though to say, asterisk, "We've seen this before. We know how it ends." Asterisk. The crowd began to sense the shift. Murmurs grew louder. Applause lines meant for Trump fell flat, replaced by awkward silence. When he tried a recycled insult, "Sleepy Barack," a ripple of laughter ran through the audience, not with him, but at him. For a man who built his identity on dominance, it was the one reaction he could not afford. Trump grew more frantic. "You're weak, you're fake, nobody respects you." He jabbed the air with his finger, his face flushed, sweat glistening, under the studio lights. But every outburst only made the contrast clearer, one man losing control, another embodying it. Obama finally spoke. His voice steady, measured, cutting through Trump's tirade like a steady drumbeat. "I'll let you finish," he said softly, "because the American people deserve to hear exactly what you sound like when you're cornered." The words landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples across the studio. Gasps echoed. Trump froze for half a second, caught off guard by the calmness of the jab. Tried to laugh it off, forcing a smirk, but his eyes betrayed him. He knew the control was slipping, and nothing rattles a man built on dominance more than realizing the crowd is no longer laughing with him. Asterisk. The tension climbed higher. Social media feeds lit up again, clips spreading before the moderators. Could move the discussion forward. Hashtags multiplied. Hashtag Trump meltdown. Hashtag Obama.com. Hashtag debate from hell. And as Trump sputtered through yet another string of accusations, Obama simply waited. He knew timing was everything. He knew that letting Trump unravel was as important as anything he could say. Every second of silence, every calm glance, every steady breath was building toward something bigger. The crowd leaned in, sensing the crescendo. Then, with the nation holding its breath, Obama leaned forward. He placed both hands on the table, his expression unwavering, his tone almost whispers soft, but heavy with intent. The noise of the room seemed to fade, as if the entire country were leaning closer to the screen. But then, Obama leaned forward, lowered his voice, and unleashed the line that would echo across America. The silence before it happened felt eternal. Barack Obama, leaning forward, his voice lowered to a deliberate calm, seemed to carry the weight of every citizen watching. The contrast was breathtaking. Trump still fuming, red-faced, muttering under his breath, and Obama steady, his composure unshakable. Millions of eyes waited for his next words, the kind of silence that doesn't just hang in the air, it strangles it. Obama began slowly, each word measured like a surgeon's scalpel. You say this is all fake. You say it's all a witch hunt. But the truth, he paused, letting the tension stretch so tightly the audience could hear their own heartbeats. The truth is that the record is clear. Asterisk, he didn't shout. He didn't lean back smugly, simply began to list. Asterisk. Donald Trump used the office of the presidency not to serve the American people, but to serve himself. We all remember the hush money payments, remember the obstruction of justice inquiries. We remember the foreign accounts, the endless trail of financial smoke that somehow always ended in the same place, your pocket. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The moderators froze, eyes darting between the two men, as though unsure whether to intervene or simply bear witness to history. Obama let the audience reactions swell before continuing. You called it fake news. You told Americans not to believe what they saw with their own eyes. But facts don't disappear just because you tweet the word hoax. He leaned back slightly, letting that sentence burn into the air. Trump's mouth opened, but no words came out. He stammered, then forced a laugh that sounded more like a cough. More lies, you're lying, Barack. You're a liar. His voice wavered, his usual showman's rhythm collapsing under the weight of Obama's precision. Asterisk, asterisk. Obama didn't react to the interruption. Pressed forward, calm and relentless. You stood on that stage years ago and promised to drain the swamp. Instead, you filled it with lobbyists, with grifters, with people now facing indictments while you pretend you had nothing to do with it. You mocked the rule of law, but the law hasn't forgotten you. The crowd exploded in applause, a roar that forced Trump into a tight-lipped glare. He tried again to interject. Wrong.
Oh, totally wrong.
The law, but his words were swallowed by the reaction, the sound of people clapping, not for showmanship, but for truth delivered with dignity. And Obama was not finished. He looked directly at Trump now, eyes locked, unblinking. You used the Oval Office to enrich your family. You invited foreign interference into our elections. You treated the presidency as if it were a business you could own, rather than a trust you must honor. And when caught, you lashed out at the very institutions designed to hold leaders accountable. The moderators shifted in their seats, stunned. One whispered into his earpiece, clearly waiting for instructions from producers scrambling behind the scenes. But the cameras didn't cut away. They zoomed in tight on Trump's sweat-soaked brow, on Obama's steady gaze on the crowd's stunned faces. On social media, imaginary tweets flew across the screen. Asterisk at Real-Time Patriot. Asterisk Obama, just dropped the hammer. Hashtag Truth Hurts at Justice for All, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I've never seen Trump look so small. This is history. At Debate Watcher 22.5, asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, the silence in that studio is louder than Trump's shouting. Asterisk, 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 Obama. Let the moment breathe. His pauses weren't stumbles. They were weapons. Each silence forced Trump to squirm, to fill the void with nervous muttering. Word that followed cut sharper because of it. You can call this unfair. You can call this fake. But the American people are not fools. They saw you. They heard you. They lived through the consequences. Of your corruption, jobs lost, trust broken, chaos sown, and they deserve better. The room seemed to collapse inward. Even the moderators sat frozen, hands clasped, unsure how to proceed. Trump shifted in his chair, tugged at his tie, wiped his forehead. His once confident gestures had turned, jerky, unsteady. And then, the line that would echo across America, "No man," Obama said, his voice as steady as stone, as bigger than the Constitution. And no amount of shouting can bury the truth. The audience rose to its feet, an eruption of applause, cheers, and stunned disbelief. The sound reverberated through the hall as Trump sat trapped in his own silence, a silence louder than his loudest insult. His lips moved as though to speak, but nothing coherent followed. He muttered half-formed phrases which hunt Obama's corrupt. Everybody knows, but the words fell flat. Lifeless, drowned out by the roar. Moderators finally tried to intervene. "Gentlemen, we need to move on." Even their voices shook with the electricity in the room. Debate had stopped being a debate. It had become a reckoning. Trump attempted one last pivot, leaning into the microphone, his tones suddenly pleading. "People love me. Everybody knows it. Nobody's done more for this country than me." The words sounded small, almost fragile. Against the tidal wave of energy now coursing through the audience, Obama didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence, his composure, his refusal to be dragged into the muck was the loudest statement of all. He leaned back, folded his hands, and simply waited. The cameras caught it, all the trembling of Trump's lips, the steady calm in Obama's eyes, the historic weight of the moment pressing on every viewer watching from living rooms and phones across the country. The debate stage no longer felt like a stage. It felt like a courtroom, the nation itself, the jury, and truth the only verdict. But the explosion wasn't contained to the studio. It detonated across the nation. Asterisk, the moment Obama's words landed, the studio couldn't contain it. But the real detonation happened outside those walls, in living rooms, phones, and laptops across the nation. Within seconds, Twitter lit up like a wildfire. Hashtags burst into life. Tag no one above the law. Hashtag Obama mic drop. Hashtag Trump unhinged. Clips of Trump stammering, sweating, tugging at his tie looped endlessly, paired with Obama's calm, cutting line, asterisk, "No man is bigger than the Constitution." Asterisk. By midnight, that sentence was everywhere. It wasn't just a debate remark. Anymore, it was a mantra. Memes flooded timelines. Trump drowning in paperwork labeled indictments. Obama coolly dropping a microphone onto the resolute desk, captions reading, asterisk, the moment America remembered who the adult in the room was. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Cable news scrambled to keep up. On CNN, analysts replayed the exchange frame by frame, dissecting Trump's unraveling as though it were a historic sports highlight. One commentator, normally cautious, admitted, "I've covered Trump for years. I've never seen him look that cornered, that outmatched." Obama didn't just win a debate moment, it exposed a truth. Even Fox News, long a bastion of Trump's defense, struggled. Their anchors fumbled for words, muttering that Obama was disrespectful or grandstanding. But the split screen betrayed them. Obama.com presidential, almost serene, and Trump read, sweating, blurting half-coherent lines. One conservative guest reluctantly sighed. It wasn't a good look. He seemed unhinged. Meanwhile, late-night hosts feasted. Stephen Colbert opened with the clip, then dropped his own mic on stage. Trevor Noah compared Trump's meltdown to a kid caught stealing cookies and then yelling that the jar lied. Jimmy Fallon played the soundbite on repeat, adding cartoon sound effects of implosions every time Trump stammered. But the ripple effect didn't stop at comedy. It bled into culture. Celebrities chimed in. Kerry Washington tweeted, asterisk, "This is why dignity matters. Thank you, President Obama." Mark Ruffalo called it the political knockout of the decade. Even athletes weighed in. LeBron James, posting a simple crown emoji over Obama's face. asterisk, and beyond America's borders.
Ow.
The world was watching.
Oh.
European leaders hinted at the power of words over chaos. A Canadian paper declared, asterisk Obama reminds America and the world what leadership looks like. In Africa, newspapers framed the clash as proof of resilience, a son of Kenya standing tall against corruption. Even rivals like China couldn't resist commenting, with one state run editorial noting slyly that American democracy still shows flashes of accountability. For progressives, it was vindication. Years of shouting into the void of watching corruption spin unchecked, now condensed into one crystalline moment where truth punched through. Social media timelines became confessionals, I cried. When I heard him say it, finally, someone had the courage to look Trump in the eye and tell the truth. This wasn't just politics, it was history. And yet even Trump supporters found themselves shaken. The loyal base clung to their defenses, parroting witch hunt and deep state, but cracks showed. One viral clip captured a MAGA hat wearer in a bar, watching the debate, muttering, "He looked bad, real bad." The comments spread faster than any campaign ad. The shockwaves weren't just emotional, they were cultural. Teachers played the clip in civics classes the very next day. Schoolers posted TikToks reenacting Obama's calm delivery versus Trump's sputtering chaos. Artists sketched digital posters with Obama's words superimposed in bold across American flags. And still, through the noise, the lesson lingered, heavy and unresolved. Obama's line wasn't just about Trump, it was about the country itself. If no man is bigger than the Constitution, what does that mean for a nation? Still grappling with corruption, division, and broken trust? The clash was no longer just two men on a stage. It had become a mirror. Americans saw themselves angry, hopeful, divided, inspired, all colliding in one unforgettable moment. And yet, beyond all the noise, one question remained. What lesson would America take from this clash, the days that followed? The clip of Obama's words was no longer just a debate highlight. It was studied, shared, and repeated like scripture. But the power of that moment didn't rest solely in exposing Donald Trump. It carried something larger, something deeper. Obama's calm declaration was not about one man's downfall. It was about reminding America of its higher calling. Asterisk, asterisk. Because beneath the shouting, the insults, and the political theater, the confrontation drew a stark line. Arrogance versus dignity, selfishness versus service, corruption versus justice. And in that line, Americans saw a truth that couldn't be spun, couldn't be shouted down. When arrogance crumbles, dignity remains. When lies collapse, integrity endures. Asterisk, that was the lesson etched into the memory of millions. Obama wasn't just sparring with Trump. He was giving voice to every immigrant who had been told they didn't belong, every working parent who feared the system was stacked against them, every young person wondering if decency still mattered in public life. His words said, yes, it matters. It always will. And the beauty was in the contrast. Trump, flailing, desperate, embodying the chaos of unchecked ego. Obama, steady, unyielding, reflecting the strength of someone who carried generations of struggle on his shoulders and still stood tall. It was a reminder that true leadership is not about volume, but about values. Not about how loudly you demand respect, but how quietly you earn it. This is why the moment resonated so powerfully. It wasn't about left or right. It was about right and wrong. It wasn't about a single night on stage. It was about what kind of nation America chooses to be. A nation of spectacle and corruption, or a nation that insists on integrity, no matter how hard the fight. For progressives, for immigrants, for every community that has had to prove their worth in the face of arrogance, the lesson was clear. Dignity is strength. Calm is power. Truth, though sometimes slow to rise, will always outshine the darkness of lies. Parents told their children to watch the clip. It's not to laugh at Trump's collapse, but to see in Obama's restraint an example worth following. Teachers used it to explain democracy's essence, that no leader, however powerful, is above the law. Activists carried it as a rallying cry, a reminder that their fight was not futile, that history bends, however slowly, toward justice. The moral, then, was not just that Obama bested Trump. It was that dignity itself had triumphed. Live on air. And that lesson doesn't fade with a news cycle. It lingers, urging America to believe that the qualities mocked as weakness, patience, humility, respect for the rules, are in fact the strongest weapons a democracy can wield. Asterisk. Asterisk, because if dignity can stand tall against arrogance on live TV, imagine what we can do together as a nation. And so, the night that began as just another political showdown became something far greater. America watched as Trump went nuts, red-faced and unraveling, while Obama exposed his alleged crimes. With the kind of composure only history can forge, one man shouted, stumbled, and crumbled under the weight of his own arrogance. The other stood tall, unshaken, a living reminder that dignity still carries power. That's why this moment matters, not just for the headlines, not just for the trending hashtags, but for what it revealed about who we are. When corruption shouts, truth speaks. When arrogance tries to dominate, dignity endures. And when lies take the stage, justice will always wait for its turn in the spotlight. Now, here's where you come in. If you felt the electricity of this clash, if you believe truth and dignity should never be drowned out by chaos and lies, then this is your movement too. Share this story. Leave a comment with your voice. Subscribe to join a community that refuses to look away when history is being written in front of our eyes. Asterisk, asterisk, because what happened on that stage wasn't just politics. It was a reminder that we, the people, have the power to demand better, to call out arrogance, to uplift dignity, to refuse the noise and embrace the truth. History doesn't just happen. It's made when ordinary people demand the truth. Asterisk.